Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending from where you're joining us today. Welcome to this virtual event, Consumers Unmasked, Insights into an Evolving COVID-19 Reality. From shopping and self-care to everyday life and the environment, in our proprietary COVID-19 community, we ask consumers around the globe to share their feelings, behaviors, and future intentions as a reaction to the current pandemic. Joining us here today are Joeri van Bergh, future consumer expert, and Sarah Van Oerle, our COVID-19 community manager, who will share some insights from the community, going from shifting consumer behavior to some first post-lockdown consumer intentions. If you have any questions during the session, please use the question pane, which you can find at the right-hand side of your screen. We will try to answer as many questions as possible right after the session. Without further ado, I would like to give the virtual floor to Joeri.
Thank you very much, Katja, and a warm welcome from Sarah and me as well. With over 700 people from all corners of the world watching us, we are very eager to share you our insights built around the 6 themes you can now see on your screen. We gladly committed half of our lockdown liquor stock last night to come up with these 6 intriguing names. Luckily, we had the sober support of 102 participants in 13 countries across the world who allowed us to have a qualitative peek in their daily lockdown lives. We deeply engaged with them for 2 weeks in a phase when they were still 8 pounds lighter, in the very first weeks of being confined at home, end of March, early April, but also very recently recontacted them just last week to understand what has changed in their habits in the past month and how they're looking to the near future, with many regions easing or about to ease some restrictions. We know that at first many people felt lost in the new homebound situation. Some of them lost their jobs or business for an uncertain time and were confronted suddenly with boredom or the lack of self-fulfillment. Those still at work were juggling with the constant pressure of being logged in while making sure the kids were not putting the cat in the microwave. And we all lost our freedom to move where we want and meet people. And it's not the words that we are missing, like this Spanish Gen Xer is stating. It's not the endless stream of memes and jokes my father-in-law is apping me, but we miss hugging them. Well, not my father-in-law, but we miss hugging in general. Last week, when we checked in with our research participants, Sarah, 1 month later in the lockdown, were they still struggling with their new abnormal?
Now, well, Joeri, it seems that consumers are finding a new balance in the new reality they are living in today. While social distancing measures at first seemed very weird for them and uncomfortable, by now they have grown into them and they are getting used to this. It's not strange anymore today to keep distance or even to wear a mask and gloves when they go shopping. Similar also for digital connections. While at first people thought Zoom parties would be very awkward talking with a large crowd of people online, now they're actually enjoying them and having lots of fun. Now, for families living together, the initial soft pillow fights could have turned into real fights for some. So we see a clear divide between partners and families on one hand who are growing closer together, sometimes even to their own surprise, and others who are really struggling, and definitely parents with teenagers in the house are going through a very challenging period. Then for eating habits, well, at the beginning of lockdown measures, we saw many consumers comforting themselves with fast food and sweets. Over the past week in lockdown, there's an increased awareness about the importance of good health and therefore a dedication or at least an intention to change their bad eating habits. So consumers seem to be looking to more healthy alternatives to come not literally rolling out of lockdown. A bit similar what we see also for media consumption. So at the start of the lockdown measures, it looked really great to finally have time to binge watch all the cool series that people had on their list. But by now they're really feeling tired of being a couch potato and they look for more useful pastimes. And finally, we also see people going from full agendas to empty agendas, at least when it comes to social gatherings. And over time, it looks like they started to look at the future again, taking some previously offline planned events online, or also think about future holiday plans, although for most of them, this won't be for 2020, but rather for 2021, if talking about going abroad. Now, despite this new balance, consumers express missing a lot of things, and many of them are actually boiling down to tactile sensations. So, as human touch is really a fundamental part of who we are and of our human nature, consumers express missing the human touch during this period of lockdown and fear that they even will have to miss this for a longer period of time because they will remain careful. Now, if we look at shopping from this angle, we see that although online shopping is very convenient and some consumers only discover the true advantages of it right now, many really miss going to the store. They miss touching, picking up products, trying them, smelling them, not only because it provides information about the product that they intend to buy, but also because it's just part of the entire experience and the enjoyment of shopping. Now, next to missing this tactile experience during shopping, touching products, of course, they also miss the real human touch, let's say being close with family and friends. That's really the top one that they are missing today. So we see that consumers are really craving for this real human contact and real human touch. Now, some of them try to fill this void by reliving their memories, and in doing so, they create what we would like to call neo-relics. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, they figure out ways to make their memories tangible. So think, for example, about sending personalized postcards with a family picture, personalized card games with pictures from friends, or even making a family newspaper to deliver to grandparents in quarantine.
Thanks, Sarah. Although it's not the same tactile experience you just mentioned, consumers are definitely trying to compensate the lack of human contact with digital tools. WhatsApp, video, aperitifs, digital date nights on Skype, video cooking competitions. My wife even had a Zoom quiz with her friends made by my sister-in-law, in which the last round focused on fun facts on the male reproduction system. I mean, I was stuck at home with her, I could hear everything. Artists and DJs turned to Facebook Live, where music performances reached more than 67 million views only in March. And brands, of course, were there to help us remotely connect with each other. Mexican grill restaurant Chipotle organized Zoom calls each day at lunchtime, with 3,000 participants joining daily. They had celebrity appearances like reality TV stars. They gave away TV vouchers to win home deliveries and even helped you with a Q&A to cook your own meals at home. In less than 2 weeks, it brought them $500 million in earned media. And Scotland's brewery, Brewdog, came up with an online pub, the Brewdog Open Arms, hosting live music, pub quizzes, and even a live stream yoga and tips to stay sober during isolation. To promote, of course, its alcohol-free Punk AF. So Sarah has been talking about reliving old memories, but what about creating new ones? Even in the lockdown, babies are born, birthdays need to be celebrated, and mothers need to be put in the spotlight on Mother's Day. Congratulating the party animal these days happens via extensive video calls. Some go for a Zoom party, or when you have very nice neighbors, they might sing happy birthday live for you after the 8 p.m. clap for caregivers. Of course, no party without a present. While some take it easy by sending an e-voucher, others go in total do-it-yourself mode, delivering homemade desserts or sending self-made birthday surprise packages. Generation Z, who received negative press on not caring about the virus and still having lockdown or spring break parties, are actually among the more mentally vulnerable segments of the population. They are closely following COVID-19 news, and when not doing TikTok challenges, they feel sad. They feel sad because they see big life milestones cancelled or postponed. Think of sweet 16 birthdays, graduation parties, getting your driver's license, or prom night. Memories we, older generations, all have stored in our brains, covered with a fat nostalgia layer, will not be there for them. Burger King France is offering free post-lockdown birthday parties, complete with food, cake, gifts, invitations, and decorations to 600 kids in France whose parents uploaded a photo of their birthday cakes tagged with hashtag unhappy birthday to social media. And within 24 hours, 2,000 parents in France participated. And on Saturday, May 16, Condé Nast's Teen Vogue will celebrate the senior high school classes of 2020 with a virtual prom. In the weeks leading up to the big night, Teen Vogue helps them to prep for the big night at home by featuring daily prom-focused content, styling advice, makeup tutorials, dance preps, and do-it-yourself tips. The virtual prom will be a nationwide virtual community experience on Zoom, featuring special performances and celebrity appearances. Okay, Boomer, in case you don't recognize any of the names on the slide, it's not because you did a silly dance on TikTok with your kids that you are cool now. Teen Vogue's website is also selling makeup, jewels, clothes, tripods, power banks, and ring lights to look good during the prom night. Gaming usage during lockdown in the United States went up with 45%, and games like Fortnite and Minecraft offer an ideal platform to bring people virtually together, like Second Life, but this time for real. As many music festivals were cancelled, Block by Block West was organized with guest performances of Massive Attack and Pussy Riot. You do know these names, right? But on the 25th of April, after a couple of minutes, the server crashed because of too many participants, and they will give it a second try on May 16. Between acts, players can buy their favorite band's merch, and all proceeds from the event will go to the Coronavirus Emergency Response Fund. Singles, especially those living on their own, are another very vulnerable group during this lockdown period. And oh yes, they are looking forward to the times they can mingle again, as illustrated by the quote of this Australian participant. They try to combat loneliness with hugging and playing with their pets, scheduling lots of virtual meetups with family and friends. But also dating is not off the table these days. On the contrary, online dating might be changing for good, with many platforms rapidly adding additional features like video calling. New quarantine dating platforms were also launched. They match you to someone every evening at 6 p.m., but only if you have washed your hands properly. You then have 20 minutes of private text messaging time. Compare the 20 minutes to the 2 nanoseconds you spend on Tinder to see a profile. So dating is perhaps becoming less superficial in lockdown times. And after 20 minutes of texting, if you are still texting, you can finally have a video chat. And instead of going to a comedy show together, you can watch it online. Or if you're ready to mingle again, find a hookup using the Netflix party chat. If Netflix and chill doesn't work to find your internal sunshine, there's also remote therapy. MindHope is a currently free Spanish platform connecting expert psychologists with those in a vulnerable state to mitigate the psychological effects the virus can have on individuals. Sarah, when checking in with our global citizens, how are they doing in terms of resilience at this point? Are they able to reset and recalibrate?
Well, Joeri, indeed, consumers, they seem to use the current time also to reinvent themselves in different ways, thinking about their physical health, self-care, mental health, developing new skills to become, let's say, a 2.0 version of themselves. Now, some even take it a step further, and they see the situation as an opportunity to rewind and reset, as we see on the next slide. It's like rethinking, for example, career plans, or it might just be a wake-up call, the situation, to finally start looking for that soulmate that they are missing in their life. Now, the current pandemic also increased consumers' awareness on the importance of a good health, a basic condition, but also definitely their immune system. So next to trying to eat healthy, many also take action to boost their immunity, which can go from eating more citrus fruits, which explains, of course, the prices of oranges really going to the roof, to drinking green tea, making smoothies, to also taking vitamins and supplements. Now, as mentioned before, consumers do not want to literally roll out of lockdown. So the weight-conscious ones are definitely trying to limit snacking or look for healthy alternatives. Also, working from home actually increases the risk of snacking and not moving around enough, to that extent even that some of our consumers are using apps to support them in taking regular breaks. Now, when talking about moving, we saw that participants who still had the opportunity to go outside, they were rediscovering the nature around them, close to home, during daily walks, runs, and hikes. Those who needed to stay inside, they turned to online workout sessions. Now, when it comes to self-care and grooming, comfort is key, although the quarantine pillow dress might be taking this concept a little bit too far. Now, while we saw some consumers sticking to their usual habits in the beginning in an attempt to keep life as normal as possible, that really changed over time. Many women, for example, they started to prioritize their skincare over makeup, thereby spending more time on, for example, skin masks, or finally trying out the samples that they have laying around in their bathroom. Those who are still wearing makeup seem to be more open to try something new, and they are looking for inspiration online, for example, via YouTube tutorials. Being confined at home also seems to spark an interest in do-it-yourself activities, like making their own hair masks or making their own face masks. A general friction both for men and women is really the fact that hairdressers are closed. So while some debate cutting and dyeing their own hair, this is not a habit that they intend to embrace post-lockdown times. They're really looking forward to being pampered by their hairdresser again. Now, being confined at home also has repercussions on consumers' mental health. So the financial worries, but also the general uncertainties, how long will this last, when will there be a vaccine, really causes a lot of mood swings for consumers. Like we see also here in this quote from a UK participant who really describes the anxiety that she felt at the beginning, which then eased out a little bit over time. Now, there are many ways to cope with mental health issues, ranging from very extensive digital talks with family and friends to vent all these feelings of anxiety and anger and frustration that people might have, to meditation and mindfulness apps. Now, a mantra that has been repeated frequently the last couple of weeks is also to be kind to yourself. And consumers try to apply that by pampering themselves, but also their family members. So think, for example, about nice flowers on the table, good food, can be home cooked, but can also be nice takeout, a long bed, taking time to read, spending time with pets, or just simply the joy of a small piece of chocolate really helps people to get through those rough times. Now, next to that, they also mentioned that distraction is really key to remain sane. And Joeri will tell us all about how consumers do this by making good use of what we would like to call weapons of mass distraction.
Yes, Sarah. The key in keeping sane is distraction, as you mentioned. And in our community, we saw people escaping in painting by numbers, gaming, bread baking, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, or just accepting one silly challenge after the other on Facebook or TikTok. We also received an unlimited list of quotes like this one of people playing and fondling with cats and dogs. And the Dog Trust in the UK even had to tweak its famous slogan after they found out that online searches for getting a puppy more than doubled in the past weeks. And then book reading. Book reading is also skyrocketing with this classic novel, originally published in 1947 by French Nobel Prize winner Albert Camus, tripling sales. That's why there's 3 books on the slide. Yes, we researchers love infographics. So tripling sales both in Italy and in France in the first weeks of March, and selling 154,000 times in 1 month in Japan. compared to the average yearly sales of the book of only 5,000 copies. In regions with closed nurseries and schools, busy parents were desperately helping with homeschooling and trying to keep the kids entertained. Luckily, Audible, part of the Amazon group, started to offer kids audiobooks for free in 6 different languages. While my own 16-year-old daughter was just getting a nice tan in our garden, already prepping for her staycation looks, I guess, other better educated kids were working on their skill sets, learning to code or work with Photoshop, or adults were studying arts, humanities, or social science. US online course provider Coursera saw a massive desire for self-improvement with an 800% rise in registrations since the start of the pandemic. And 500,000 people signed up in one weekend, end of March, for Yale's course on the science of well-being. Dyson, as a brand, created 44 engineering and scientific challenges for children, all using common household products to make, for instance, a lava lamp while learning something about science, as research has shown that 6 out of 10 parents in the UK want their kids to learn new skills during lockdown. It's a nice move from a brand helping parents to offset screen time when feeling bad that they're using Fortnite and Netflix as their babysitters. And the other more socially approved babysitter, trampolines, sold out like toilet paper. It wasn't just the kids who had fun jumping, as we saw sales of adult toys spiking from New Zealand to Colombia, with e-shops reporting at least double revenues in that category. And to summarize, Sarah, humans' normal fight or flight response to danger with no place to flight or no flights and no ways to fight seems to be replaced by a read or breed response. Apart from these funny side effects of a crisis, were there any other positive things people shared with us during lockdown, Sarah?
Well, a potential silver lining of the worldwide pandemic is the overall feeling that we are in this together and the wave of solidarity this has also caused. So this can be really small things, like, for example, some of the consumers regularly checked in with grandparents. They were doing some shopping for the neighbors, sharing vegetables from their garden, or they can also do more extensive efforts like donating blood or also donating to good causes, as we see on the next slides. Here we see a quote from a Spanish consumer who is actually at the moment replanning her wedding because of COVID. And she says that they decided together to not giving gifts to the guests at their wedding, but donating the money that they save by doing this to a charitable cause.
Very nice. And consumers also expect this solidarity, as we call it, from brands. And they do notice proactive support actions. They appreciate them and they actually expected them. So they saw Dove, Unilever brand, donating products like soap, sanitizer, bleach, and food to hospitals and health centers, and also making money donations to Direct Relief and Feeding America. And Coca-Cola in the first month stopped all global advertising and donated the budget to NGOs like the Red Cross to support the most vulnerable. Nowadays, Coke is thanking not only the health worker heroes, but also the ones supporting them and supporting all of us, like delivery riders, engineers, and volunteering restaurant owners. Next to that, consumers want brands to acknowledge their own situation and challenges and fears. A British singer-songwriter, Charlie XCX, is writing a new album in lockdown, and she's using Zoom to connect with her super fans. For her newest single, Forever, she released a music video that you're watching for the moment, consisting of hundreds of clips from fans. In the US, Ford's Built to Lend a Hand program is offering 6 months of payment relief on financed vehicles during the corona crisis. And in Canada, Kraft peanut butter, it's one of the best-selling items in lockdown, both checking on the need for indulgence and the long shelf life, is giving away its media ad space to local small businesses that are still open, like coffee shops and bakeries. And Gumtree, the online marketplace, has launched a new initiative in Australia to match people in need of essential items or services during the COVID-19 crisis with those able to provide them. They range from delivering groceries, checking on pets, tutoring kids, or providing laptops for remote workers or students. Let's move to the next chapter, and it's the fourth chapter. It's called my God, it's a difficult word. Enoclophobic crowds. That means crowds that are afraid of large groups of people. So large groups of people afraid of large groups of people. That's what we will experience in the coming weeks after lockdown. And it will only take one bark or one cough to become the black sheep. To minimize the personal risk of contamination, people will avoid or delay to return to crowded public places, or at least limiting the time in these crowded public places. It's what we see in Asia happening today. It's what we read in our global qualitative community as well. In order of importance of most fearful places, number one are the indoor venues, cinemas, concert halls, indoor sport arenas. Number two, large outdoor venues with crowds and queues like amusement parks and festivals. And on number three, shops, if there is no guarantee to keep social distance. Now, don't misunderstand me. People are craving to get all of these back as soon as possible when the social distance rule is not necessary anymore, or when we have a vaccine or cure for COVID-19. Until then, most of them are staying local as much as possible. They learned how to do home workouts instead of going to external gyms. Many people are fearing closeness and are afraid to get infected, as we see illustrated in this quote. And Sweden's explanation of not having so many rules and still open bars and restaurants is, well, we don't kiss everyone. We are a social distant population. In the rest of the world, brand innovations and smart ideas to reduce this risk of infection are very welcome. Art Center Mediamatic in Amsterdam is testing the setup for a new way of having dinner. It was inspired by the French chambre séparée, whilst having to wait for permission from the Dutch government to reopen their restaurant and art spaces. The new 1.5 meter or 6 feet society is becoming more of a realistic image for the future, and eating and drinking with face masks will not be an easy thing to do. After lockdown, we won't get back to normal or back to business as usual. We will live face masked in a 6 feet society where social distance is still the norm. And for many youngsters and older youngsters like myself, the fact that most summer festivals are cancelled is a real bummer, or a summer bummer, you could call it. Considering both the virus and enoclophobic crowds, yes, I did it this time, we will initially need lots of workarounds to get live gigs working again. One initial idea that is already happening in some of my favorite European regions, in Vilnius, for instance, Lithuania, which you can see the video right now. And they also did a trial in Denmark. It's the concept of drive-in gigs. The Danish drive-in gig sold out almost instantly. 500 tickets were sold for the show, which took place on the outskirts of Aarhus, and the following day the stage became a drive-in cinema. Instead of whistling or clapping, people are using their windshield wipers and car lights to show their appreciation for the bands on stage. And of course, wearing masks, which is a brand new experience for Europeans, comes with some hurdles. I personally seem to have misshaped ears, thank you parents, but this Italian girl in our research community is already seeing the fashionable side of it, and we do love Italians for their great food, great wines, fantastic fashion, and I almost said fantastic girls, but my wife is listening just next to me here in our home office lockdown. On the next topic, clean is the new green. As my previous presentation was focusing on conscious consumptions, one of the questions I get a lot is on how will sustainability evolve now in the new reality. Well, what we see in the community is that consumers' first focus will be on health and safety. So we anticipate that there will be a slow return to reusables and bulk. Before Corona, all plastic was bad and the new demon for consumers. Now, out of fear for contamination, Shoppers choose packaged veggies and fruits again rather than bulk. Reusable shopping bags are banned out of the stores, and people wear disposable gloves. This germophobia or misophobia for the nurse also affects the share economy. Although car and bike sharing might be saved by companies like NanoTouch, producing nanocrystals that break down any organic contaminants when charged with any visible light. The company more than doubled its sales after the corona outbreak, and Wheels, an electric bike sharing company in the US, is one of its new customers. And no, don't try Dettol or Lysol infusions at home, kids. Sustainability is not completely off the agenda for post-COVID consumers. Many have noticed more clean air, so wildlife taking over human-dominated areas, and they revalued walks in nature again, as Sarah has explained. While reducing grocery shopping frequency to minimize the risk of infection, they also reduced food waste to an absolute minimum. And with a stronger sense of community, solidarity, and the rule to stay close to their homes, they rediscovered local farmers, butchers, and bakeries. Bioproducts also saw an uptake. If not for being local and without pesticides, they're also often pre-packed. In general, helping local economies to revive will endorse the trend of what we call terroirism, not terrorism, that was already present with conscious consumers. The majority feels obliged to support the local economy post-corona in different ways. Many see themselves visiting local shops and restaurants once they're considered safe again. They are also mentioning creative initiatives to support local businesses during lockdown, like buying restaurant gift cards or ordering takeout from their local restaurants. And in discovering TikTok and other social platforms, 30 plus will make social commerce and direct-to-consumer sales grow even faster. Live streaming commerce, which is nothing new in China and backed by Alibaba, is helping rural farmers to become the new influencers of the urban population in China. Farmers in Sichuan are giving chicken for adoption at this moment. Even flipside shopping and track and tracing will see new applications post-corona, with the Workers' Right Consortium keeping an updated list of retailers and fashion brands, keeping their commitments to workers and suppliers. Back to enoclophobic crowds and germophobia, will people start traveling again when borders are reopening, Sarah?
Well, Joeri, for many consumers, they see their travel plans actually fall into the water, and that can be a true mental setback. It's something that people are looking forward to, and seeing this disappear so abrupt, even without a financial compensation, sometimes is really hard for them. However, when it comes to planning holidays, we see a clear divide between consumers from hard-hit regions versus less hard-hit regions. Like on this slide on the left, we see a quote from a consumer from the Netherlands who says, like, okay, when airlines go open again, I will absolutely consider traveling abroad. On the other hand, we see a consumer from Spain who says, like, are you crazy? We haven't contained the virus yet, so I wouldn't consider traveling abroad. So there is a big divide between hard-hit versus less hard-hit regions on these facts. Now, those who are already thinking about a staycation are mainly motivated by health and safety concerns, while for some also financial consequences are a driver to not go abroad this year. So how do they envision their staycation at the moment? Well, they're thinking about inviting friends to come over for a dinner, of course, in small groups, visiting local bars and restaurants, taking time out to relax, not checking off their holiday list as they would do abroad, for example, and taking time to do some local sightseeing trips. Now, as people's finances might be a reason to not go on holidays abroad this year, let's look at their spending and saving, or as we call it, their SOS. Now, the worldwide pandemic has had a tremendous impact on the economy and thus also on people's spending power. And a big question that we have at the moment is whether consumers in a post-lockdown world will go into indulgence and start spending a lot, or will they go into the other direction and save for potential next lockdown scenarios? Now, consumers are in flux, their finances are in flux, and they do worry a lot about the upcoming recession, consequently also the impact on their employment status, drops in interest rates, rising country debts, and consequently also taxes. And they do expect that banks take action around this. What they are suggesting is, for example, deferring loan payments and mortgages, offering overdrafts with lower interest rates, or also removing transactional fees from their cards. Now, we see that consumers in our community were actually living in two separate realities. So on one hand, we have those who are still full-time employed, and they predict little changes actually in their spending behavior in this post-lockdown world, nor a tremendous shift in savings and investments. They just want to go back to their normal life, their old life. Some, those who can afford, they are already exploring some more durable investment options, giving also the plunge of the stock market. On the other hand, we have those who are heavily impacted and they are canceling any unnecessary purchases. Thinking about luxury items, gadgets, some even intend not to buy any new clothes in the coming year, less eating out, etc. To be able to pay their bills now, but also to save up a little bit on their savings account and to have some money that is directly accessible for future use if they run into trouble. Now, we might even say that some go into streamlined spending, like this consumer from the Philippines, who says that he's really focusing on what he needs instead of what he wants. So focusing on insurance, health insurance, and not on the fancy gadgets that he really wants. Now, however, we see consumers are living in those two realities, but actually all of them are really careful about the future. They really display this kind of wait and see attitude. So even those who are currently employed, they're really careful. They do not predict any major changes at the moment, but they are also realistic when it comes to job security or insecurity in the future. Those who are temporarily unemployed, they state that their spending behavior will really depend on when they can get back to work, and then also have a final overview actually of the true financial impact of the crisis. So because of that, we do not predict any major indulgence buying, but rather some low-cost compulsive shopping, like, for example, inexpensive clothing and accessories. And they mentioned chains like Zara, Mango, Primark, etc. And also more affordable indulgence, meaning that they are really looking for the little pleasures in life. And this can be really simple, like just going to IKEA, browsing to the shop and having some cake and coffee afterwards, or being able to go to their favorite food shop, having a nice Starbucks coffee, or satisfy the cravings that they have at the moment for McDonald's and KFC. Buying a new record in their favorite record store, or finally having that well-deserved haircut. So all those little moments of pleasure now seem very, very valuable for them. In this category of affordable indulgence, we also see consumers replacing the things that they're fed up with. So people have spent months in their home, and the lucky ones also in their garden. And in preparation for the staycation, or in worst case, a second lockdown, consumers might decide to spend on home and garden improvements. Now, also here, we're not talking about very major renovation projects, but again, those small touches that really help them to create those moments of happiness. Now, for some consumers, like this lady from the US, it's really unthinkable to even consider consumerism, given that so many people around her are suffering, and it might feel a bit unfair then to think about this. However, for really status seekers, micro-indulgence might not be enough, and they want to keep buying their branded products. But of course, also they are not blind for the suffering and the pain around them. So while previously they wanted to really brag with the big logos and the big brand names, they might like to tune that down a little bit today, given the circumstances, and go for more consumption. Now, talking about brands, during the first lockdown measures, we also saw a lot of panic buying going on, and some of people had to miss their love brands or their favorite brands. So, Joeri, do you have an insight on how consumers will deal with that in the future?
Well, Sarah, we will all become a bit more preppers, learning from another favorite European country of me, Finland. Next time a lockdown will be announced, people in our community stated that they will be better prepared, they will take it more serious from the start and panic less. They will have a haircut up front, so I hope the next wave of the virus first sends us an SMS to get an appointment at the hairdresser in time. They will install a proper home office. They are rethinking the home space, which has been their holy space for 2 months, as you mentioned, Sarah, and a place to relax, work, exercise, play with kids, pets, and other homebodies. And when it comes to health, they will keep up the hygiene practices, washing their hands. They will check and update their health coverage in their insurance. They will buy more in-home sports equipment and do a dentist or a doctor checkup. When it comes to entertainment, they will buy puzzles and books, of course, art and do-it-yourself material, and of course some toys for the kids is what they mention this time. This South African Gen Zer, as you can read in the quote, will prepare first by removing the unibrow and then enjoying a McDonald's burger once she has the chance, and at least then she's ready for the next lockdown. So that's basically it. Also, we see that many consumers claim that they will not engage in panic buying and hoarding in preparation for future events. They will keep, on the other hand, a small stock of necessities, including cleaning supplies, plastic gloves and masks. So okay, perhaps they're already a bit panicking in their house. They might want to add in some love brands, which they going out of stock in the first crisis, and they hated it. So they mentioned Nutella, Coca-Cola Zero, in the US peanut butter and pedigree, I hope for their dogs, in case these brands would go out of stock again. And they do have an intention for more planned shopping. With the lower frequency, trying to avoid to get infected, and using lists also online, they learned the advantages compared to last minute dropping in a store and buying too much food that they will have to throw away again. So that will change too. There's still one friction. They would like to boost immunity systems with healthy fruits and vegetables, but they're not easy to stock. So they are also thinking of food with a longer shelf life, like canned items. So that was the insights we got from our COVID-19 community. So to summarize, we started with lost and found, people that are eager to feel other humans again, but also are creating memories nowadays, new memories of things that happened in the past or things that they're doing right now. So the tactile approach is quite important to them. Remotely Yours was about all the digitization of spending time with friends and relatives and even our colleagues and peers. We will do more working from home in the future. Self 2.0 was all about rewinding and resetting, also reflecting on life. What is really important to me? Do I still like my job? Do I still love my wife or hubby? We saw a growing number of divorces in several regions in lockdown. But it was also about weapons of mass distraction. So we talked about gaming, about streaming, but also all the new hobbies, the new skills people were learning while they had a bit more time. Soothing solidarity went into the fact that we are a bit more social today. Even we're distant, we are thinking about the ones who are really in need. And it's in the little things, like in our grandparents or the elderly, in keeping in touch with our parents and grandparents. On the other hand, it's also brands that need to tap into this empathic feeling, and we saw some examples of different ways to do it. Then we went into this horrible word of inoculophobic crowds, people afraid of people or large groups of people. We are waking up in a 6 feet society tomorrow. And we also talked about what's the future of sustainability in this new environment. So clean is a new green at first, safety first, but then also we are still keeping our recycling schemes, and we are still aware of a number of things that are related to sustainability, which could make a brand difference or a brand advantage for brands. Should I stay or should I go was all about staycations linked to, do we still have the money to go on a holiday, and do you want to go on a holiday with this fear of getting infected? Then we went to spending or saving. We talked about shopping trends, but also the finances in flux for many people, uncertainties, and the indulgences that we will do will be micro, will be smaller things. For those who have more money, it will be inconspicuous consumption. So actually, we're not showing off that we still have money because we don't want to hurt the feelings of people who don't have the money. And the last part was about the prepper's delight, where we talked about how people are preparing for the future after lockdown, but also maybe when a new lockdown will happen. So wrapping this all up, Sarah, we also were asking people on the community, did they make any, not New Year's resolutions, but post-lockdown resolutions?
Well, indeed, so we don't have a crystal ball predicting how the new reality will look post-lockdown, nor have our consumers, but we do indeed see that they have all kinds of good intentions. So they aim to spend more quality time with family and friends, and for some this goes hand in hand with working more from their home office. When it comes to health, washing hands is definitely a habit that consumers have embraced over time, and that is here to stay. Next to that, carving out more time in their agenda for sports, making home-cooked meals, or simply unplugging and being outside is on their health priority list. When looking at shopping, contactless paying is a keeper, and also consumers hope that they can stick to this more planned approach of grocery shopping. So going less frequent to the store and also working, for example, with week menus. Budgeting will become a necessary evil for many, and they express the intention to really focus more on the needs instead of their wants. Now, of course, over time, also bad habits have been developed, and consumers are now working actually to get rid of those. They're fed up with binge watching and actually screen time in general. So they hope to be more out and about in a post-lockdown period. The no makeup days will be over, as is the case also for cutting and dyeing their hair by themselves. They really are looking forward to get that grooming done again by their hairdresser. Now, when it comes to food, consumers hope that they can limit their snacking cravings, and instead of ordering food, going to a proper restaurant again, maybe indeed the chambre séparée restaurants that you mentioned. And finally, also many parents will also be glad to get rid of homeschooling so that they can step out of the shoes of the teacher at home and just become mom or dad again.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you also, Joeri. If you have any questions, you can post them in the Q&A pane, but maybe before we move to the Q&A, perhaps also good to note that we have a tailored COVID-19 community program available that can help you unmask your consumers and gain insights in how the shifting reality impacts your consumers and your brands. And this program uses a pause, play, and fast forward scheme as a framework, where the pause phase is all about taking the moment to connect and check in with consumers as to how they're feeling, how this reality is impacting their daily behavior, their habits, including, for example, important brand touchpoints and consumption moments. And the play phase is all about acting upon that changing reality and making sure to stay relevant. And lastly, that fast forward phase is all about preparing your brand for that post-COVID reality. Which behaviors are here to stay, and how will a post-lockdown situation influence what consumers want and do? And what is the impact on your CX, your innovation, your branding and communication efforts? And with success, we've been working with many brands over the past weeks, not only in getting them closer to consumers, but also making sure that brands have this finger on the pulse on what is going on today in the mind and in the world of consumers, helping them prepare for tomorrow. So if you want to know more, don't hesitate to get in touch and ask us about that. Maybe we already have a question here. Sarah and Joeri, maybe a question for you, Joeri. What do consumers expect from brands? Do they want them to restart being present in terms of communication, in terms of activation?
I think Sarah, that is the question that you would like to.
Yeah, I will take this one.
Okay, great.
So we asked in our community to consumers what their opinion was about communication, but also research and innovation efforts of brands. And actually for all these three domains, consumers were quite clear. They expect brands to invest in those, meaning that yes, they want to be approached by brands for communication. Yes, they expect brands to keep up their research, market research efforts, and also their innovation efforts. Now, to come back to communication as such, I think there has never been a period of really stopping or pausing and now reconnecting with consumers, because from the beginning of the lockdown, we saw that consumers really appreciated brands getting in touch with them, just asking how they were doing and letting them know that they were there for consumers if there was anything that they can do. Then also in a second phase, let's say, consumers, they do expect brands to communicate about how they are adapting their offering to be more relevant in today's reality, being a lockdown situation. But they also expect brands to look to the future. What are they doing in a post-lockdown situation? How are they going to prepare for that? How will they help consumers being prepared for that? And they also just expect brands to communicate about that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. Maybe another question we'd have here, Joeri, maybe you, do you think that COVID will speed up the shift to digital shopping, even if we're looking at especially elderly people or digitally reluctant consumers?
Well, they definitely experienced it. Some of them, especially the older generations. The only thing is, they often had a first negative experience when they tried to shop online. The platforms went down. They couldn't handle all the traffic, or things were sold out all the time, or deliveries were late. So the first experience for many new older target groups wasn't that positive. But on the other hand, because of germophobia and the convenience and ease, we will see an uptake in online commerce and online shopping for the coming months, especially since with all the rules of wearing face masks, only being able to stay 30 minutes and buying only necessities in shops, it won't be fun shopping in the coming weeks. And if it's not fun shopping, then we can also do it online. So it's, I think that's the situation for the moment.
Another question is linked to banking and insurance. What are consumers expecting from banks to do more in a world that we would say is quite uncertain? Is there anything that, especially if you look at alternative ways in banking, any ideas and insights on that coming from the community?
Yes, as we also said during the webinar, consumers do expect banks to help those who are in need at the moment. If it's not for themselves, it's for the people that are suffering. We do also see an uptake in more online banking. So online shopping might go also hand in hand with online banking, and especially the older consumers might be forced to now adopt these kind of services. Just thinking regarding then insurances, we do not see any other expectations there, but the insurance that they are definitely more interested into or more paying attention to would be cancellation insurances when they would be booking their next trip. And also, as Joeri mentioned, some consumers are more careful with their health insurance now, double checking, booking a meeting with their agent to check whether they can upgrade and be prepared for a potential next lockdown or a next pandemic.
Great.
Yes, adding to that, perhaps, Sarah, I think contactless payments, it's also something that people are now increasingly experiencing as seeing the advantage, especially older generations. Again, that's certainly a difference. And then when it comes to investments, for those who still have money or had money when investing on stock exchange, maybe they will be a bit more risk averse and go back to more certain values like real estate. So that might also be a difference in the broader financial picture.
Okay, great. We have more questions, but because of time reasons, we won't be able to answer them. However, we will bundle all these questions and send a follow-up document, a Q&A document for all of you, including also questions from an earlier session. So with this, I would like to thank you all again for joining us today. Thank you also, Joeri. Thank you, Sarah. Again, if you have any questions, you can still add them to the question pane, or you can get in touch using contact us at insites-consulting.com. I would like to thank you all again and wishing you all the best and stay safe.